Hello everyone, welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host Paula Taylor and this is mini episode 7. I have a really important announcement today and it does affect the podcast, so bear with me. After a couple of years of trying to figure out how to do this and a few kind of false starts that didn't really lead where I was hoping they would, I have created an online community called the Spiritual Integration Sanctuary. This has been a long time coming. I have multiple reasons for doing this. I don't want to go into a long thing about that. I did a whole episode a while ago where I talked about building community, intentional community. That's part of this. This is the last mini episode of the podcast that will be available on this Facebook page as well as on streaming services. So as part of this community, I am going to be offering some exclusive content that's not available anywhere else. This is a subscription that you can sign up for through my website. There should be a link in the video here. I will also put it in the podcast notes. So this is $11 a month. And for this $11 a month, you will get exclusive access to some things. I will go through that, as well as interaction with other like-hearted individuals, which is where the community building part of this comes in. Let me tell you a little bit about what's included here and just briefly why I'm doing this. I don't want to make this too long because I want to jump into our topic. So as part of this community, what you will be able to access is exclusively these mini episodes, these bonus episodes of the podcast I've been doing. They will only be available through this private group, the Spiritual Integration Sanctuary. I will be live streaming them in a private Facebook group. If you're not on Facebook and you like to access this differently, you will be able to access these directly through the groups page on my website as well. Once you sign up for the subscription, you'll be part of both groups if you choose, or if you don't with the Facebook group, you'll still get access to the content, most of it through the Wix page. I cannot go live through my Wix page, unfortunately, so any live interactive things that I do will only be through the Facebook group, but the videos will always be posted afterwards on the Wix format. As part of this group, you will receive all the mini episodes, any bonus episodes. That's usually 1 to 2 a month that I've been doing. And moving forward after next week, there's one more full episode of Wind Down Wednesdays that will be available in this format. And then the meditation part of the full episodes will no longer be posted to the streaming services in a public way. The topic discussion is going to continue. The podcast is not going anywhere. But if you want to access the guided meditation, healing, activation, energy work part of the full episodes, that will only be available to members of the Spiritual Integration Sanctuary. And there's a reason that I'm doing this beyond just, it feels like it's time for me to kind of receive back. I've been putting out a ton of content with no real compensation for 4 years. So that is part of it. It's time for me to start claiming my worth in terms of the quality of the content I'm putting out. But I've also had multiple people over the last 6 to 8 weeks comment on how powerful these guided meditations are. A lot of them, they're not just guided meditations. They're energy healing sessions, they're sound healing sessions, they're activations, quantum activations. And I want people to have support when they receive these beyond just listening to a podcast through a streaming service. So part of the reason that I am moving the meditations to this Spiritual Integration Sanctuary group in a private place is so that you have support, the support of the other group members. I will be in there responding as much as I can to comments. I will also be going live in the private Facebook group to do some Q&A sessions, to do some private sound healing, group sound healing sessions. So this is a way for you to interact with me on a little deeper level with a fairly small investment on your part of that $11 a month. And it feels aligned with where I'm headed in my business in terms of the quality of the content I'm putting out, the intensity of some of the activations that I'm offering. I want people to think about what they want to receive. I want people to have support when they receive them. So that is part of the reason I'm doing that. So this is the last mini episode that will be available I am not removing any of the previous podcast episodes at this point, so all 166 plus the previous 6 mini episodes will all remain on all the streaming services with all of those meditations. This is a change moving forward. So there will be one more episode of the full podcast next week that'll be live on this page and posted fully, including the meditation activation on all the streaming services. And then after that, in order to access the guided meditation, the healing session part of those full episodes, you will need to join the Spiritual Integration Sanctuary. I will also be offering some other perks to that, so you can visit the link here and read all about what that entails fully, what is on offer for you. This is a really nice way to do some exchange. I am offering some exclusive things. I'm offering more support. And then I am asking to receive a little bit of an investment in that $11 a month on your part. You can cancel it at any time. We're all moving into this together, so be patient with me as I figure out the ins and outs, the intricacies of this. I really love doing this work. I really love offering things at a level where people can receive them without breaking the bank. So again, all the previous episodes of the podcast will remain free. And then these things that I'm moving to this private group, it's only $11 a month if you want to continue to access those. Thank you for coming to my TED Talk. So today's mini episode, we are going to talk about spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity, just briefly, and then we'll do about a 10-minute meditation around that. This came up recently on TikTok. Somebody had asked me a question and I mentioned something about spiritual bypassing and they said, well, I don't know what that is. How do I know if I'm doing that? That's a great question that I can't really answer in a short TikTok format. So I'm going to do it in a little longer format here where I don't feel quite as rushed as I do on TikTok. So spiritual bypassing and toxic positivity, I feel like these are two terms that are basically used interchangeably. And it's this idea of not doing the deeper work, not doing the shadow work, not acknowledging when things aren't going well. There's a lot of toxic positivity in the new age realm, especially in this kind of new spirituality where everything's all love and light all the time. And you see these people and they're dressed all in white or beige and everything about their life is amazing. And, it's just not real. That's the thing. Nobody's life is 100% amazing all the time. It is not how being a human works. And so if that is all that we are presenting to the world, if that is all that we are acknowledging, we are not really expanding spiritually. We are not really doing the spiritual work. And if you're doing that work in private and not acknowledging it in public, I think that also does a huge disservice to people that might follow these content creators where everything's love and light all the time. I recently saw this big creator on TikTok and he kind of came out of the closet a little bit and said, look, I think I've been misleading you by pretending that my life is this wonderful thing all the time because it's just not that way. It's just not that way. And right now, stuff is hard. This is a hard transition that we are all being asked to make, this big expansion out of the 3D into the 5D, whatever words you want to use for that. The energy is extremely intense. It is oscillating. I just saw someone use that in response to a TikTok I was saying going back and forth, but oscillating is a great idea for this. There's a huge amount of energy coming in. We don't have the same spiritual support that we have because a lot of our spiritual support team members are off working on this global expansion, this global upgrade. So for me personally, I've been having a rough go of it. I'm just going to be really clear and authentic because I think it's important for people to see that no matter how long you've been doing this work, no matter how professional you are in doing it, I do this professionally, I still have periods of struggle. It is part of the contraction and the expansion. If you don't allow for the contraction, there's nowhere to expand to. You can't continue expanding without letting go of some things that aren't serving you to make space for the expansion. And that's really what the contraction is. So I have been struggling a little bit with my mood. I am missing my archangel guides that are off working on this planetary grid upgrade, which is amazing. I'm so glad that they're doing that. but I was used to having them really accessible to me, and I was used to having access to these parts of my quantum body that are essentially shut down right now while all of these upgrades are happening. And I have beautiful, amazing guides who have stepped in. I have this Arcturian guide that I just finally, he told me his name, and we started dialoguing just in the last couple of days. I was just seeing this like faceless sort of panel of these blue beings. And I've got my dragons. I'll be working with that in the event that I'm doing tonight. We're always supported, but the specific type of support that was really fueling a lot of my energy and my particular energetic body, quantum body, right now is not accessible to me. And that is hard because the spiritual work is hard, and it's hard enough to find support in the physical, which is part of the reason I'm starting this Spiritual Integration Sanctuary community, because I did this work alone for a really long time in the physical, and the only support I had was in the spiritual, because I got hurt over and over again, reaching out and sort of ending up in environments that just didn't feel really fully supportive and felt more like hierarchies, or there felt like there were judgment and things like that going on. So it's been a rough go of it. Physically, it's been hard. A lot of people are sick. A lot of people are having symptoms. I had a migraine for almost a week that is still kind of like at the edge of my perception. My sensitivities are off the charts right now. Sensitive to light, sensitive to sound. It's just a lot. We're doing this shifting, this elongation of our energetic body. So there is a lot going on, especially in the head and throat and chest right now. Could be anywhere in the body, could be GI stuff, but as we're asked to expand, we have to release in order to call in. We have to clear in order to call in. So when these difficult emotions are coming up, when we have fears and doubts and old trauma memories, a lot of times it's like, I thought I already dealt with that. And sometimes there's a deeper excavation that needs to happen. There's something left in the field that we are now ready to see and release. When it comes up, it means you're ready to deal with it. But if you're not dealing with it, if you're not acknowledging the difficulty, that is spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. That is this idea of, oh, everything's love and light all the time, and I never struggle, and everything's just beautiful and wonderful. And we all get stuck in that space of denial. Denial is kind of another word for that. I was in denial about how difficult things have been for me until about the last week or so. I was like, I'm handling it. I'm doing it. I'm in it. I am experiencing it, but it's not been easy. And when we can let go of the denial, when we can let go of the spiritual bypassing, the toxic positivity, this like, I don't do this. I don't get depressed anymore. I've done a lot of work around this. The minute you have a thought like that, it's probably a little bit of that denial or spiritual bypassing. We cannot clear what we don't see. We cannot let go of what we don't acknowledge. So when we can see and acknowledge that we're having difficulty, that we're in a contraction, that we have fears and doubts and old stuff coming up, it's actually an opportunity to grow even more. Because when we do sit with that, when we do just allow it even into our awareness, we've taken the first step toward letting it go or clearing it, so that we can call in even more expansion. We used to be on a cycle of contraction and expansion that roughly mimicked the full moon globally. Everybody's on their own personal cycle. That's the other thing. So I might be saying things are difficult and things are going great for you. They might be genuinely going great for you. It's probably worth asking if there's a little bit of a nagging sense in your mind. It's always worth asking, is there something I'm not seeing here? Is there something I'm not acknowledging? But we're on our own individual path. So sometimes what's happening globally is a contraction, and you're just happen to be in a really big expansion right now. There's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And same thing the other way. Sometimes everybody else is expanded and you're really contracted and you're like, what's wrong with me? Nothing. You're just on your own path. But from a global cosmic perspective right now, our contraction expansion was following roughly a full moon cycle where we would contract. So there's kind of this release at the full moon. You get this full expansion and this release, and then we kind of contract down to the new moon. And then we begin to build up to the expansion and the release, and then we contract. This is mimicked in nature in lots of places. I've mentioned the menstrual cycle. mimics this. There's lots of things. Breathing actually mimics this idea of expanding the lungs as we bring our diaphragm down. That actually contracts the lower part of the body, but there's an expansion as we breathe in, as we bring air into the lungs, and then there's a contraction as we release. So this expansion contraction process exists everywhere in nature. What has been happening with the cosmic energy this year is that it is greatly increased in both intensity and in speed. So we still have this kind of overarching expansion to the full moon and a contraction to the new moon. The expansion is bigger, which means we're being asked to release more. So the contraction is more intense. But what I am noticing, even in this past week, I am having expansion and contraction multiple times in the same day sometimes. Definitely multiple times in the same week. There is so much energy coming in right now. If we are going to utilize, if we're going to integrate and make use of that energy, we have to do that work of expansion and contraction. And it's tiring work. There's a lot of integration required. So when we have a big expansion and then we have to integrate that leads into the contraction. That leads into a call for rest, a call for self-care. Sometimes it leads into even symptoms of being sick, ascension symptoms, or actually getting ill. So be gentle with yourself about this, but also do your best to be honest with yourself about where you really are. If you're struggling, it's okay. Everybody struggles. There is not a single person alive on this planet that does not have some aspect of struggle in their life, regardless of whether they are honest about that with themselves or others. So when you have a period of struggle, acknowledging that it's happening is the first step toward actually allowing it to shift. We cannot shift what we cannot see. And sometimes when we get into a certain point in that struggle, we also need to ask for help. We need to reach out to a mental health professional, get some licensed care in that way. We need to reach out to somebody who does somatic release if we're dealing with trauma, body work, energy work, quantum activation work. I have a lot of starseed stuff coming up for myself personally right now. There are certain people who specialize in that. That's one of the paths I'm walking in my own business, is to start helping other people with that. Before I can do that, I have to figure it out for myself, just like I had to do with the dimensional frequency expansion sound healing method that I share. So how do you know if you're spiritual bypassing? Just really quickly here before we step into the meditation. It can be really difficult. There's a nuance there sometimes, right? You don't want to go around second guessing yourself all the time. I don't know, am I really expanded or am I spiritually bypassing? There is a part of you that knows. Your body does not lie to you. So if you are telling yourself that everything's going well and everything's amazing, but you're having a lot of symptoms in your body, that might be a sign that there is some spiritual bypassing going on. Only you know the answer to that. Does that mean that anytime you have a physical symptom, you're spiritual bypassing? Absolutely not. But that can be a sign of that. If you have kind of a nagging sensation, a nagging little thought at the back of your mind, like maybe I'm missing something here, or there's something going on I don't quite understand, that can be a sign that you're sort of in denial or in this spiritual bypassing toxic positivity thing. I think that's all I'm going to say about that in this mini episode. This may be a topic that we come back to, but I think that's where I want to leave it for today. So let's meditate together. So for this 10-minute meditation, find a comfortable position. Whatever position calls to you is perfect. Make sure you're supported in whatever position you choose. Close your eyes and let's take 3 deep oxytocin breaths together. You're going to breathe in through the nose, let your belly float out. As you sigh that breath out through the open mouth, you're going to use an audible ha sound from high to low, just vibrating the vagus nerve, telling the body that it's safe to relax here. We'll practice one with you. As you're ready, nice big breath in. And do at least 2 more of those. What what we are going to focus on in this meditation today is just arriving where we are. Just being in the present moment with whatever sensations, whatever emotions come up. The way that we avoid spiritual bypassing is to be really honest with ourselves about where we are. I'm assisting you with some Mintakan energy of love through this transmission to help hold a space of support. It can be really difficult to acknowledge where we are, especially if we're struggling. But once we acknowledge that, we can find some expansion even within the contraction, even if it's just through some nervous system relaxation techniques like deep breathing, like being present. If at any point in this meditation you're feeling a little triggered, you can also use the thymus taps or thymus thumps rubs technique. So placing a hand on your breastbone and just lightly tapping it or rubbing it. If you're going to do the rubbing, you can go in either direction or both. If you're going to tap, you can lightly make a fist or just use fingertips. Just tapping on that breastbone also vibrates the vagus nerve, just tells you that you're safe. So just arriving where you are in this moment, noticing how your body feels. If it's calling for a little bit of gentle movement, go ahead and allow yourself to do that, just really gently here. We sometimes have a tendency to go straight into a big stretch. That doesn't necessarily serve the nervous system when we're asking it to come into that rest and digest mode. So if you're being called to move, just do it gently. Noticing how you feel, taking any deep breaths, adding that oxytocin ha, or just sighing through the open mouth is a great way to release. What we're doing is just acknowledging any energy in our body that perhaps would like to be acknowledged, would like to be released. We're not asking it to release, we're just acknowledging, but sometimes that alone begins to move the energy, begins to allow us to let some things go. Checking in now with your emotional well-being, with your emotions. We also feel these in the physical body. Just checking in, where are you? Where have you been? Have you been feeling really good? Have you been feeling really expanded and joyful? Have you been dealing with a little bit of irritation? Have you been dealing with some anger or sadness or grief? Have you been dealing with some fatigue, which is often a mask for these difficult emotions that we don't want to look at? Just asking yourself, how am I feeling emotionally? How have things been going for me? Not trying to change anything that comes up here. Breathing into any discomfort. Sometimes when we're looking at difficult emotions, we might get a tightness in the chest or the belly. We might actually get some pain or discomfort in the back or the neck or the hips. So just acknowledge any sensations that come up physically, any emotional feelings, and take a deep oxytocin breath or 2 or 5. As you're acknowledging where you are, you're also continuing to signal to your body that it's safe. It's safe to feel these emotions. Emotions can be very uncomfortable. They can feel like so big and scary that we run from them, and the body will have that nervous system triggering reaction and will go into fight, flight, freeze, or fawn. So if we can acknowledge our emotions while continuing to signal to our body that we're safe, that it's okay to be relaxed, we can go a long way toward retraining our body that it's okay, that it's safe to feel our emotions. You can add those gentle thymus rubs or thymus taps. Sometimes when we get uncomfortable with emotions, it can help to shake. You might get up and just do a full body shake. And again, we're not asking these emotions to shift, we're just looking at them. We're just inviting them to be seen. Think about how good it feels to be seen. When you have a relationship with someone or you go into a space and you feel really seen and welcomed, when you feel really accepted, It's such a beautiful, warm, fuzzy feeling. We're just offering that to our own emotional bodies right now. And maybe you're just giving yourself a little message around that. I know things have been hard. I see you. I allow you to feel exactly how you feel in this moment without expecting change, without expecting you to hide it. You might even be having some emotions come up. Crying is an excellent way to release energy. So if you have laughing sometimes is a release, if you have these releases coming up, just allow them to flow. Another way that we tend to bypass our emotions is by not allowing them to be expressed physically through things like crying or laughing or even sometimes yelling. Just continuing to add those oxytocin breaths, continuing to be supported through the energetic work I am doing as well. This is just a short visit to check in. You may notice some shifting just by allowing. Unconditional love is about allowing. So as we allow space for our emotions to be seen, we also allow space for them to release if they're ready. But removing the pressure around that release also goes a long way toward that feeling of safety, of acceptance. You may go on feeling exactly the same feelings you started this meditation with, and that is completely fine. As you begin to acknowledge these difficult emotions and sit with them, they will release. Emotions are meant to flow through us, and we have been trained in all sorts of situations, family dynamics, societal dynamics, cultural dynamics, to not allow these emotions to flow freely. When we allow them to flow, they come up, they peak, they crescendo, and then they release. They come back down. But when we've been holding things for a long time, especially, it can take some time before these emotions begin to move, and they often get more intense before the release, and that is as it's meant to be, but it can feel really scary. So know that there is support available to you. You can reach out for one-on-one help. There are lots of professionals out there who can help you with this work. So as we come into our last moment or two here, just taking a few more deep breaths, sighing them out. Send some gratitude to your emotions if you can. If not, perhaps send some gratitude just for this practice. Send some gratitude to yourself for sitting down and participating in this short meditation. You may not be at the place where you can thank your fear or your anger or your grief, and that's completely fine. Just by being in this space, you're showing your emotional body support. So just receiving for the last moment here, I'm going to assist you with some dimensional frequency expansion with some emerald frequency, just beautiful for soothing and calming and heart opening. Ooh, say, ooh, ooh, say, letting go of the practice now with another nice deep breath, sighing that breath out, adding that audible ha sound if it calls to you. Take a moment here as you come back to yourself to purposefully, intentionally move your body. Maybe start just by wiggling fingers and toes. Let that progress into a bit of a shake. Shaking arms, shaking hands, shaking feet if that's available and feels good. Maybe shaking your torso a little bit. You might even get up and just bounce on your toes, just releasing any energy here that's ready to be released. Anything that came up that's ready to be let go of. Know that you are in exactly the right place. There's no rush along this path. It's not a race. When we are in contraction, when we aren't feeling good, we are still just as worthy and just as loved and just as lovable as we are when we're in full expansion. And our state will always shift. Contraction will always yield to expansion, which will always yield back into contraction, and so on. So know that the state that you're in will not last forever. It's not meant to. Sat Nam. The truth of your identity is that you are so loved and so supported. There is no need to hide from any part of yourself. Take one more last deep breath, sigh it out through that open mouth. And as you're ready, you can open your eyes. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you next week for Wind Down Wednesdays.